Hopefully you guys had a good time networking. Let me get this live recording going. All right, hopefully you guys had a great time networking. It's always like pulling teeth from y'all to get y'all back to our seat. All right, I tasked Paul, so I have a pile. Any of you guys know I'm an avid book reader. I have a huge pile in my garage from COVID that like stacked up of like, because we didn't have, as many meetings last year. So we got giveaway books for tonight. Paul's going to be giving those away tonight. Let me just say this. I've known Paul for years. I was trying to figure out when we met, 17, 18, something like that. We've known each other for a few years. I've learned so much from Paul over the years. He's a wealth of knowledge. So not only from my relationship with him of what I've learned, but the community depends on him as an expert in this. So I really want to implore you to take notes, ask questions, because this is one of those topics that most investors either get wrong or struggle to have confidence in. Because ultimately, whenever you're buying a deal, you not only need to get the valuation part of it, right? Like, hey, what would it fixed up be worth? You need to get that number right based on comparable stuff. But you also have to get what would it take to fix it up right. And because most people struggle with that, this is going to be one of those things that will help you to make your money right when you buy. So without further ado, Paul, if you want to come on up. So Paul, you've been a contractor for over 30 years.
Yes.
Okay. You built for how many years?
Close to 20.
20 years he built mostly custom homes. Okay. Some like commercial too, because we were down on St. Charles that one night and they're like, hey, I built that. I'm like, you did? And then
I did it to my kids too, walking next to, yeah, I did that.
I know, right? Any of you guys do that with like flips and wholesale deals, but like, I walked that house. I flipped that house. Like when you're driving, it's a trades thing, right? My father does it all the time. He's in the trades. Anyway, tell me this. So can you tell me about LSU, what you do there? I'm going to let you get started here shortly. But sure. LSU, just a little bit of a resume here. What does LSU have you do there?
So I am an instructor at LSU teaching building science and construction. I'm not actually teaching college students, I'm teaching professionals, architects, engineers, builders, folks in weatherization. So anything that deals with building science, certifications, continuing education, things that deal with high performance. Has anybody heard about the Energy Star programs for houses to get Energy Star label, Build America programs, solar PV arrays, but also on the construction side, the Fortify management. If you're interested in building a high performance home for the wind ratings and get the insurance discounts here in the Gulf South, there's a program called Fortify. There's different levels, and it's teaching how to actually construct a building that can withstand, whether it's 130 mile an hour, 3-second gust, or whatever that standard is that you're going after. So we teach builders and engineers and the trades how to do that. And so I've been doing that since 2006. Actually, I was just sharing with Jen that I'm actually retiring at the end of this year. So the last class I'm teaching there is the third week in September. So,
congratulations.
Yeah.
Did the gray hair that gave it away? No, I'm just kidding.
The missing hair gave it away.
One hair, so that's huge. LSU also utilized you after Katrina, after the 16, 17 floods, to do a lot of training for the public. Obviously, WWL reached out because of your level as an expert in the region. The reason why I'm pinpointing this is that he's who a lot of developers go to when things go wrong in houses. People go to him. The point is, I want you to know that you have someone who's of stature before you, which is why when I first met him, one of the times we were having lunch, I was like, I've got this problem property, and I don't know what to look for 100%. This was the first time I was actually taking down an older house, and I think one of them used to be like a grocery stand, the other one used to be an old church. There were these old houses. I was buying this portfolio from this landlord. Long story short, I was like, is there any way I could pick your brain about what you would look for, because it was out of the norm for me. So without further ado, tons that I've learned from him. I'm gonna let you get going because I know that you have a lot to give here. And so there's a few seats up here. Apparently people are allergic to the front row. If you want to, you can move up, just FYI.
So I want this to be as interactive as possible. If you have questions, listen, I have thick skin, you're not going to distract me, raise your hand. Let's get to it. Just think it's appropriate for the topic we're talking about. I walk houses just about, probably do anywhere from 10 to 12 a week. Some are for the purpose of buying, a large part is for the purpose of doing consulting. They're hiring me to identify causation of the building failure and offering solutions on how to correct the problem. So I have a consulting business that just does nothing but that. And I also do a lot of legal work for attorneys, whether it's for the plaintiff or the defendant, both in state and federal court, based on construction. So I deal with construction all the time. Primarily, it's related to building failures or performance problems that are circling around moisture or comfort or decay, mold. And so I see a lot of the ugly stuff. The great benefit of that is I get to take the information, I get to share it with my next set of customers that are having or experiencing similar problems. I also get to share it with y'all tonight, and that's what I get to do at LSU, is because I have a lot of field experience, I get to help people make better choices. So the way I look at houses may not be the same way you look at homes, and that's okay. I'm not trying to change the way you inspect the home tonight. Really what I'd like to do is if there's a couple of nuggets you can take away saying, oh, I didn't think about that, I'm going to start adding that to my routine when you walk out. That's all I'm really hoping that you gain from this. But if you have questions, I want you to ask as we're going through. So let me tell you what I do, and I'm big on understanding the why and the purpose. So I am walking a house to identify its as-is condition.
Real quick, Paul, he's also an investor. Not only do you have your own portfolio, there's some things that we bought together.
Yes.
So understand that he's not just speaking purely from a professional stance, he's speaking as someone who has a few portfolios.
So before I show up at the house, I'm actually driving the neighborhood. I want to see what's around that home. I want to see what's the condition of the surrounding houses. I want to see where's the drainage flow, or any creeks nearby. I want to get a feel for the grade of the neighborhood. I'm grading, A, B, or C grade. I want to see what infrastructure has been improved, condition of the roads, all that. I want to get a feel for that region. So I'm always showing up 30 minutes ahead of time. So if my appointment's at 12 o'clock, I'm riding neighborhood by 11:30. And I'm just getting a feel for what's happening. And as I'm walking to that property, I'm not just there to assess the buildings, I'm also there to assess the property itself too. How many of y'all know that we've got a year's worth of rain the first 6 months of this year, right?
Yeah.
Things are just wet right now. So that's on the forefront of everyone's mind. I'm looking for, the crawfish little nest, where the crawfish are coming up and building up their nest of mud nest. And I'm looking for water draining underneath the house. It's a raised house, as opposed to away from it. I'm looking for overhanging branches of trees. Is that something I'm going to have to address and deal with, or is my buyer going to address it? As I'm going through this property, I'm also thinking about exit strategy. If I'm going to go ahead and wholesale this property, who's going to buy it? And I'm thinking from their perspective is, okay, and y'all, I'm sure everyone that's in this room is either one or two of these categories, if not all these categories. So you're going to get it and you're going to buy and hold for your own personal portfolio, or you're looking to get this property and you're going to do a hotel, or you're going to take it to HGTV and do a complete flip. So as I'm going through all these categories and building a strategy of who would buy this property, what would they have to do to fit one of those categories, and what's the cost to do it? So that's my mindset, that's my mentality. I'm always starting from the outside, starting from top to bottom, I go from left to right. So as I'm walking to the front door, and I do this for every single property, and I train the folks that work with us to do the same thing, because it makes it easy to have this consistency. I'm going clockwise. So I'm getting to the front door, I'm taking a left, I'm walking around that house clockwise. If I'm taking photographs, and I go back and look at photographs 2-3 months later, I know I started at the front door, and went around from the left all the way to circle back around. And so I'm looking for different categories of and again, I start at the top and kind of work my way down. So something else too, let me encourage you, as you are writing down your scope of work of what projects you want to do, what improvements you have to make. If you're uncomfortable doing this, you're new at this, or this is not your cup of tea, this could be a team sport. Start walking some of these properties with the folks you may hire to do the work. You may choose to be the general contractor and use it to hire subcontractors, or you may choose to hire a general contractor and let them do his trades for the improvements. Whatever way you're going to do it, start taking them on some of these walkthroughs and get a feel for it until you're at a level of comfort of identifying what's a problem, what's not a problem, and also what does it cost for that person or that trade to do the work. I mean, that's the way I've done it all these years. Is at the very beginning, I'm walking these properties and I'm asking questions, and I'm just listening and I'm saying, well, why is this not a problem and that's a problem? Don't be afraid to ask those type of questions. So, team sport for sure. Oh, something else too. Vacant properties. If you're walking a property that's vacant, and I'm not talking a property where a tenant just moved out a few months ago. I'm talking about a property that maybe hasn't been lived in 3 or 4 years. If your property hasn't been lived in quite some time, you need to look at it a lot more careful than the house that's been recently lived in. Vacant properties are potentially a nightmare because no one's there looking at it every single day. No one's identifying if there's a roof leak. No one's identifying if there's, did they weatherize it, or this, did the pipes freeze over this past winter, and you don't know about it because the house doesn't have water yet. You turn on the water, it leaks water everywhere. You don't know about the squirrels in the attic. You don't know about the termites crawling up the wall because the property's been vacant. So if that property's vacant, slow down, look more carefully, do your due diligence. This is your opportunity to identify all these possible problems so that you can estimate what your improvement cost will be. So starting with the exterior. Like I said, I'm looking at the yard, I'm looking at overhang trees, I'm identifying fences, what type of fences. Sometimes I'll even look at try to identify if the fence is actually on a property line or not. There's some fences that aren't built on the property line. And if it's on your neighbor's property line, if you're acquiring that property, that may be something you have to negotiate and work out with them. If it's a water well system, I'm looking for a water well. If it's a septic system, I'm looking for the septic system. If it's a treatment plant, I'm looking for the aerator. And I'm trying to find out if the aerator is even in working order or not. I'll also identify where's the locations of all this infrastructure. In addition to walking the outside, I'm looking for utilities. Is it overhead power? Is it underhead power? Is it gas? Is it propane? If it's propane, where's the propane tank? Go look at the gauge of the propane tank and see if it's got any fuel in it. Or it's got a tag on it since last time it's inspected. So there's lots of things, details you can gather. You get one or two things. You can actually start taking pictures of all these things and collecting these photographs, or you can start writing down all these notes. I kind of do 50-50. Depends on the weather. If it's raining, I'm not taking down notes, I'm taking pictures. Just because it's faster and get out of rain sooner. And if you write down on their book, when it's raining, it's difficult to do that. So, the roof. What type of roof is it? Try and determine the age of the roof. Next questions. If you know that neighborhood got damaged by Katrina, there's a good chance that roof was replaced sometime 2005, 2006. If the neighbors are out there, man, don't be bashful. Talk to those neighbors. They love to talk. You just got to let them talk, right? Don't talk over them. Just introduce yourself and just stand there, be quiet, and don't start talking. Don't talk about recent tenants or recent owners and everything you want to know. You'll find out from the neighbors, particularly in the neighborhood. And you can ask them, hey, does this neighborhood ever flood? When's the last time that someone's lived in the house? You'll get a lot of great information from them. So, something else I do for the roof, particularly if I'm trying to determine the age of the roof and I don't have a good idea of it, go to Google Earth. You can actually look at a history of images, and you can pick up from the image if the roof is replaced or not. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the roof. I come across a lot of sellers that when I ask about the condition of the roof, they always say, oh, yeah, it's brand new. I put right after Katrina. Not that brand new. What is really the lifetime of a roof in New Orleans?
Yeah, so we We have some very unique conditions for longevity of the roof, particularly if it's an asphalt shingle roof, because we get UV damage, heavy amounts of rainfall, some intense rainfall, straight line of wind sometimes, and then we also have some hail damage. So if you have a 25-year roof, there's a really, really, really good chance you're not going to get 25 years out of that roof. Not in our climate. So you're probably, if you're lucky to get 20, 21, you're doing really well.
20, 21?
Yes, sir, out of a 25-year roof. If it's a 30 or 35-year roof, which are, they are available, and they were available when those roofs were replaced after Katrina, you can actually start looking at the amount of aggregate that's still left on that 35-year shingle compared to a 20-year shingle. Kind of tell the difference. That's going to take a little bit of skill, but once you start doing it more often, you'll be able to figure that out. Something else too is if they have gutters, I'll always look at the downspouts, and if there's a big pile of aggregate, that's the little pieces of stone that's on top of the shingle. If it's stuck at the downspout, that's a good sign that it's starting to lose its aggregate protection, so therefore the shingles start breaking down pretty quick from UV damage. Okay.
I find it's very common that sellers say that. They live in this, Katrina was yesterday. My niece was born 2 weeks before. She's turning 16 this summer, right? And I'm like, if they're going to get 20 years out of it, understand someone may be replacing it. And we just had Zeta. That beat up a lot of roofs recently in our area. So people are in a weird la-la land with roofs post-Katrina.
And another good resource for the age of roof, like I said, you can use Google Earth, look at the images, but if you're able to speak with their insurance agent, their underwriter, a lot of times that's a question's asked when they do the application for the insurance. What's the age of your roof? So if you have that access, you'll be able to find that information out. Any other questions about roofing? As I'm walking around the house, I'm also looking for holes in the fascia and soffit for squirrels. A lot of rodent problems. Another good telltale sign if you have squirrel infestation is the roof jacks, where the plumbing pipe comes through the roof. If you have lead jacks versus a plastic jack, for some strange reason, the squirrels love to chew and eat the lead jacks. Sometimes the lead jacks or sections are completely missing because the squirrels chew it. Of course, that's a future roof leak, if not a current roof leak. So when you walk in the attic, you're going to go to that plumbing jack, and you're going to see, is that roof decking stained, or is the ceiling stained, or is the insulation wet, matted down? Good indication that that jack is leaking. That's something that's going to have to be addressed. Also, walking the outside, look at the exterior veneer. It could be, whether it's brick or stucco or siding, vinyl siding or wood. I'm always looking at the condition of the exterior veneer. I'm looking for cracks. I'm looking for movement in the foundation. I'm looking for varying of colors. If you got a brick exterior veneer and the bottom 3 or 4 courses, or that dark, fuzzy green gray color, there's a good chance that water is getting in that brick wall behind the veneer, and it has no place for it to weep out, because the lower courses have gotten so saturated, it's growing organic growth. And it's like that all the way around, or even just a portion of the house. You may see that on some north-facing elevations because it doesn't get direct sunlight, but typically it's not just the bottom 2-3 courses, it's a much larger, taller area that has fungus and organic growth on it. So I'm looking for varying colors, I'm looking for cracks. If it's a brick veneer or stucco, most times if it cracks because of the foundation movement, it's going to occur either in the inside corner or above a window or around the window or door. If you find that same crack on the opposite side of the home, about the same level, it's a good indication that that foundation has moved. Either this part of the house is done like this, or one part of the house is staying, and the other section of the house has fallen down. So as a result, is that you see those vertical cracks around those windows and doors on both opposing sides of the house. If it's a foundation problem, you just have to dig into it. That is a great opportunity for you to call one of your local foundation engineers and have them come take a look. Just because it's a foundation problem doesn't mean you need to walk away from the house.
Yeah.
And in fact, there are a lot of people who walk foundation problems because they don't know how to deal with it. You've got a good qualified trade, an engineer who understands foundations. They can actually fix that slab, they can underpin it, secure it, prevent it from moving, and then give you a warranty that you can pass along to your buyer, or you can keep it for yourself, keep it for your portfolio. You'll have onto it, it's not going to move anymore. So there's some really good technology out there that's, I wouldn't say reasonably priced. Low end on the foundation, you're 12 to 15 grand. High end, you're 60, 70 grand. Now, let me qualify this, because I'm going to get the prices at the very end. Let me qualify what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a house, slab on grade, single story, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, about 1,500 square feet living, maybe 1,900, 2,000 square feet on the beam. So that would have like a single or double car garage, front patio, rear patio, and about 1,500, 1,600 square feet living space. Single story. This is a house that is very, very average here in St. Tammany Parish. I need to qualify that because there's going to be lots of questions you're going to have. What about this? What about that? A lot depends on the house. As that house becomes smaller in size, some of these square footage numbers that I'm going to give you at the end, or some numbers you've heard in the past, may not apply. Because even though that house is smaller, say 900 to 1,000 square feet, you're going to find it's going to be more expensive to fix a house. Because of the simple fact that you don't have a lot of bedroom space to offset the expensive part. The expensive part to repairing your house is the bathrooms and the kitchens. If you got larger bedrooms, you got more square footage, and you can use those average numbers to offset some of those higher cost positions. But the living space is expensive to fix. When you have a small house, you don't have a lot of area where you can share over it. So if it's a smaller home, you have to increase. If you use a per square foot number, you have to bump that up a little bit. If it's a bigger house, conversely, you can bring it down. Say it's a 2,000 square foot home, still 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1 kitchen, 1 laundry room. Your square footage numbers may be slightly high.
Paul, real quick, foundation issues. You and I have dealt with a fair number of them. If there's foundation issues in houses, first of all, I have 2 questions for you. First of all, if there's foundation issues, what are some other things that, say I hire a foundation company to level the house properly, because in Louisiana, it's very common, right, to have foundation issues. I hire someone to level the house. What are some other things that, as a result, could potentially be damaged on the inside?
So it could be your plumbing, particularly your sewer pipe, particularly if the house is dropped 3 or 4 inches. They may have to do some tunneling and check for the sewer pipe, or at the very least hire a plumber, licensed plumber, run a camera through it. They can check for sags and bellies, make sure that the sewer pipe is not affected by the settling of the foundation. The inside, definitely some drywall work and some mill work and some painting and also some flooring. Those are the areas you have to look at for a house that moves.
What about doors?
Interior doors, just that millwork. So the baseboards, the crown molding, the doors, those are all going to have to be affected. How many times y'all walk the house? Actually, I see this more often than not, where obviously it's some settling, some foundation. You can actually walk the floor, you can feel the floor, and the bottom of the door is cut on a slant. So when it swings open, right, it doesn't hit that bottom of the floor. It happens, right? That's a good telltale sign that this house has got some movement. So those are things you have to look at, because you have to include all that. And it depends on if you're putting in, if your goal is to make that house clean and safe and a nice, neat home for a family to live in, that's one set of criteria. You may not worry about that there's a hump in the floor. If the floor's not moving anymore, that's just part of living. Actually, very common part of living in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because those houses move a lot. So, but if your goal is to get that house flip ready and it's going to be on the cover of the magazine, well, you better get that house level. You got to get the floor perfectly flat. So it's really 2 different mindsets. So think about it as you're going through. What is your end goal in mind?
Because rental grade would be very different.
Rental grade's very different.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and you got to be mindful. I know with foundation issues, some people, because they couldn't afford it, have lived with it, and they did things like they made all those adjustments, and so you've got to be mindful, but you also can't leave tripping hazards as well.
Correct. It doesn't have to be safe, for sure. There are some things that aesthetically may be okay, but from a liability standpoint, there may be some concerns. I'll use front step as a good example. Listen, there's a code standard you have to follow for the geometry of the step, the rise-run relationship. And if you have a set of steps and you're 3 or 4 steps up to get to your front porch, and that rise-run relationship doesn't comply, and either the tenant or maybe one of their guests comes and they climb those set of steps and they fall and hurt themselves, and they find out that those steps weren't built to code, that's a liability concern. Aesthetically, they may look fine, but it may be a hazard as you're climbing those stairs, or maybe the handrail's loose. Those type of things you certainly want to address, particularly if you keep it for rental properties, just from a liability standpoint. Additions. That's something else too, when we're talking about foundations. When your house has been added onto, I'll call them Goodyear houses. You had a good year and all of a sudden you add onto the back of the house. And sometimes those additions, the foundations are not tied into the original foundation. Sometimes they're pinned, sometimes they're supported with poly, sometimes they're not. That's going to take some digging into. If you find that once you walk on the outside of the property and you see where one slab is connected or abutting the other, that's something else that increases my radar. Is that when I get inside that home, I'm still looking at the sheetrock and looking for movement of cracks. When I get up in the attic, I'm seeing how they added on the addition roof to the existing roof. How is it properly braced? So some additions are done very, very well and will last the duration of the useful life of that house without any problems. There are some additions that were done by a couple of guys that came on the weekend and just gave you some free labor that really aren't done so well. And those are the ones you have to look at more carefully. So if there's some telltale signs of, man, there's a crack between the 2 slabs that they're abutting, there's a crack in the siding or in the brick, inside there's some cracks, the bracing may not be done so well in the attic. Again, those are things, that's some red flags that you start looking for, taking some pictures, getting some notes, do some follow-up inspections if you have to. Same thing goes with the 3 primary, the big expensive stuff. And I've had questions from a few of y'all since I've been here tonight about electrical, air conditioning, and plumbing. If you are not familiar with these, that's a great time to rope in, and you more likely to have to pay each trades. Remember, it's a team sport. You're paying for their expertise. Have a licensed plumber, HVAC dealer, electrician come with you. For the electrical, depending on the age of the house, there are some homes that have aluminum wiring that you need to be concerned about. Some houses where the outlets aren't grounded because they're of their age, you need to be concerned about it. If it's a very old home, you may have, and I still see it crawling through attics on occasion, not very often, but probably once every 2-3 months. I will crawl through an attic, particularly these old homes in New Orleans, and some of the attics still have knob and tube wiring that's still live and being used in the attic. So when you start seeing knob and tube wiring compared to the newer Romex wiring, that may be an insurance problem. You may not get insurance on that house because you may not find an underwriter willing to write a house that has knob and tube electrical wiring. But you may not know that until your electrician comes with you and they start walking the property. And start listening, look what they're looking at, and start asking those questions. So there's a lot to do with electrical work, from the size of the service panel, does it have any spare breakers in it? We're talking about singles being converted to doubles with now only 1 service panel and one meter that's going to power on both sides. There are some creative ways you can work through that process if you're going to keep it yourself. But if you're going to sell that, then that cost to separate the unit left from the unit right with electrical potentially gets costly and complicated. Same thing with the water meters and the gas meters. Because if it's a single family home that's got converted to a duplex, there's a good chance that infrastructure was not put in place splitting it left and right. It may zigzag back and forth depending on from front to back and have no consideration for a future duplex. So kind of keep those things in mind. Something else about duplexes. Look at that partition wall. Is it a fire-rated wall? Is that wall insulated to help with sound? Or, you know, those neighbors are going to get really close because they live next door to each other. But you want to try and keep them as happy as possible, where they're not hearing every single conversation you're having on your side and you're hearing on their side. So soundproofing goes a pretty long way. What else about electrical? Let me check on this real quick. Condition of the fixtures. Corey and I looked at a house in Hammond, this was probably about 8 months ago, and the house was vacant for 3 months. The tenants had just moved out 3 months before we were walking. We're looking, it was a 3-2 slab on grade house in Hammond, and we got information that the house was renovated about 7-8 years ago. And new appliances, new air conditioning, new electrical fixtures, every bedroom with a ceiling fan. Well, apparently that owner had not seen that property since that tenant moved out. Because I walked in, there was not one ceiling fan left in that property, right? So don't go by old data. See it and write it down and take pictures with your own eyes. Verify yourself, right?
Well, I don't think they have the intent to, you know, but it's like, do they know? You know what I mean? Like,
They probably
oh, it's a new roof, post-Katrina.
Right.
I mean, that's subjective.
So inspect it yourself, for sure. HVAC. Let me give you some nuggets about HVAC and specifically talk about a central air conditioning unit. If you are walking a home and you're looking at supply registers and you're seeing a large buildup of dust or mold, that's a really, really good indication that the entire duct system, including the indoor equipment, is also contaminated with that same dust and mold. Because that supply register, the end, that's where the air comes out. So if it's got particular buildup there, you can better believe that from the end point all the way to the very beginning, which is the return air intake, is also contaminated with the same product. So that means if it's rigid ductwork, there's sometimes you can clean it. If it's flexible ductwork, you're going to remove and replace it. So put that cost in your estimate, the scope of work. Same thing with the smell for someone who smoked or has pets. There are ways to work through that. In fact, from owning investment property for 30 plus years, there are times when I need to go in after a tenant, and after I sanitize it and run an ionizer, you go rent ionizer equipment and remove some of those smells. It may take 3, 4, 5 days of high intense ionization treatment, but those smells can be treated and with great confidence they won't return when done right. However, there are some, and I've only seen one. In fact, there was a property that you and I looked at in Slidell. When you walked into this home, if you stood still for more than 5 seconds, your feet were stuck to the floor because the pet urine was so bad and so thick.
Oh yeah, that one. Oh yes,
I mean,
that one.
The cabinets, 4 or 5 inches from the bottom of the cabinets, were all deteriorated from pet urine. I don't know how many animals they had in there. But
It's like a whole zoo.
They didn't let them go outside and use the bathroom because they used it inside the house. We didn't actually, it didn't work out to buy that one. But that's something where an ionizer would not work. So there's some expectations here, right? That is going to gut and redo and sanitize. So just put an ionizer in there, it's not going to work.
How much does it cost for the ionizer? Or is it something that you just go to like Home Depot and Lowe's to rent?
You can hire someone to come put it in place for you, and they can install it, monitor it. But if you go to like a rental place, you can for like $500 for 2 weeks. They're not that expensive.
Okay.
And it does help a lot with smoke and pet odors, quite a bit. If you ever bought a used car and the previous owner was a smoker, they put an ionizer in a car to get rid of the smoke smell. So the technology definitely works. Plumbing. I'm always looking and trying to determine what type of piping it is. Best thing to do is open up the cabinets, kitchen cabinets, bathroom cabinets, the sink, and look at the piping. Is it PEX? Is it copper? Is it galvanized? If it's galvanized, there's a good chance that the plumbing volume, the flow is not going to be very good because the inside of the pipe has got smaller and smaller over the years. If it's PEX piping, there's a good chance that if that plumbing was done recently, like since Katrina, Yes, sir.
Taking it back to HVAC right quick, what about condensation on the windows from Ford ductwork?
What time of year? Summer or winter?
Well, I got on a house I just subcontracted. They told me the ductwork was poor because it had condensation on the windows, which way the vents were put in.
Okay, so that's possible. So let's talk about what causes condensation. This is a great question, by the way. So for condensation to occur, you need a warm air, cold air, and moisture in the air. If it's summertime, the condensation is going to occur on the outside of the window. Because the cold air, because the orientation of that cold air being applied to that glass, the outside's warm and moist, the cold air is coming from the operation of the air conditioning, and that vent is just blowing that cold air right on the glass, so the outside's going to condense. Wintertime is actually just the opposite. The condensation is going to occur on the inside of the glass, because you're warm, moist inside and you're cold outside. So when you have a house that has lots of condensation around windows, you can see where the the stool and apron may have started to decay or has mold growth on it. You can actually open up the sash in the window and look in the track. You may have some fungus or some algae growing in it from condensation. The sheetrock may be soft. You can touch the sheetrock on the side of the window. That's a good indication you've had ongoing extended condensation occurring. On the outside, look around the trim of the window. You may have some wood decay there because of the condensation. So you got a couple choices. You can improve the window to prevent condensation, or you can change the orientation of the location of the supply register.
I have my personal house, my primary is 1 year old. When I wake up in the morning, there's condensation outside.
Yes.
And the air is blowing. I mean, is that something, is that a concern? I wasn't concerned about it until yesterday.
Well, be very transparent. You need to turn that off. Because I say don't do this, but I do it in my home. Now, my house is a little bit different, special because I built it so I can do this when I have problems.
He sings in his house. I'm like, you have what? Yeah. So his house is very. I don't even want to say smart because it's
very high performance.
Yes, that's the word.
So once you start getting the inside of your house, the thermostat setting below the summertime dew point temperature, you're going to have condensation. It's not a real bad deal to have condensation outside windows. Listen, I crawl through attics all day long, just about every day. When I get home, I'm dropping that thermostat. And it's going to be cold and comfortable in my home. So I bring the internal temperature of my house below the summertime dew point temperature every single night. So, but my house can withstand it. It's built for that. The average home is not. So you need to be careful at what's on the outside of the window. If that, I'll give you, for instance, a good example is your front entry door. If it's a wood door, it's got the decorative glass in the center, no doubt you have condensation on the outside of that glass. Well, over time, where that glass is connected to that wood trim, it's going to decay because it's going to condense every single night. It's constantly stay wet. And if you have as much rainfall as we have, it doesn't have a good chance of drying anyway. Now, if that front door is facing west or even east, it may get some drying from if it got direct sunlight, but if it's facing north, it'll never get direct sunlight, and you can replace that door probably every 5 to 7 years. So that's a good chance for you to change your door to like what I have, which is the fiberglass door. You can stain it to make it look like wood, and it'll never decay. It'll never rust, never split, check, crack, anything. So there's some things you can do to overcome some of that. Not all condensation's a terrible thing. It's okay for things to get wet as long as we let them dry, and let them dry at a timely manner. If they get wet and they stay wet for extended periods of time, that's when bad things start to happen. Does that answer your question about the air conditioning?
Yes, sir.
While you're there, take pictures of the nameplate of the indoor and outdoor equipment. You can get a lot of information off of the air conditioning nameplate. Particularly if you take pictures of and write down the serial numbers. You can go on that manufacturer's website, put in that serial number. It'll tell you the year, the month it was manufactured. It'll tell you the efficiency, like with SEER rating. Air conditioners have like a miles per hour for cars. The SEER, it's S-E-E-R, seasonal energy efficiency ratio. It'll tell you the SEER rating. It'll tell you the type of refrigerant. It'll tell you the capacity, how many tons it is. all from that model number and serial number. So that's good information right now for indoor and outdoor equipment. They'll be, you know, you can get so good at this, you can look at the model number and say, well, that's a 4-ton unit. It's pretty good. So you just, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. All right, we'll check my notes about air conditioning, see if there's anything else. Oh, ductwork. When you're up in the attic, speaking of condensation, good segue here. Look for where particularly if it's on the supply side of the ductwork, if there's any drip marks or lines of water dripping down. Right below it, look at the attic decking or the insulation or the ceiling sheetrock and see if there's any water staining there. That's another good indication you have some duct leaks and some condensations occurring. While you're there, now I'm in the attic, I'm also looking up, I'm looking on the other side of the roof decking, and I'm looking for water stains or fungus, places that they've got damaged by squirrels or other rodents that are in that attic, mice, anything that may be a nuisance that needs to be addressed. If you've had a huge infestation of pests, there's a really good chance you're removing all that ceiling insulation, you're sanitizing it, and you're re-insulating it. Or bats. I don't come across it very often, but occasionally you'll get bats in those attics, and they can make quite an expensive mess that needs to be repaired after you capture them and relocate them.
Well, you got about 20 minutes.
20 minutes, all right. Page 1. 7 more pages to go. Let me skip some of this stuff. Oh, something else to look in the attic spaces. Back to electrical. When I'm in the attic, I'm actually looking for where did they add electrical circuits somewhere. Is there a junction box or a tap where they've had a whole bunch of wires into the junction box where they actually tapped and broke off a circuit and added a circuit or added lighting? Just trying to get a feel for what's happened in the past history in that house. And you can tell by the quality of work on how neat it is. If that wire, electrical wire is all jumbled up and it's kind of sticking up and it's all twisted like this, it's a good chance it was a do-it-yourselfer or a weekend jockey. If it's nice and neat and it makes circles around into the box and all the taps are nice and firm, and the wires are twisted well and all the colors match, white with white, black with black, bare copper with bare copper, then you probably had somebody knew what they were doing and did the job right. I'm always looking for, I call them the handyman house, where these projects are halfway done, or they go to YouTube University and kind of watch half the video and try to do it themselves and forget about watching the other half of the video. Because those are the type of projects that there's a good chance you're going to take that person's work and take it apart and redo it because it doesn't work right. So there's some cost and time associated with that. You're going to go back and rework someone else's job. And there's also a good chance that that person did not get permits or inspections. That may pose a problem, particularly as technology is really gaining here in St. Tammany Parish and other surrounding parishes. If that house has been added onto, and it's been added onto in the last 15 years, they know that house has had a permit or not. You can go online and look at it, have it permit inspections. If there's no permit inspections on it, that's a cloudy title. You may have a hard time selling that house. So kind of do some of that deeper research.
In St. Tammany, can you look, remind me again, can you look online for permits in St. Tammany? I know you can in Orleans, yeah.
You can. Absolutely.
So what are your options? So say someone does shoddy work, they didn't get permits, and you want to sell a property. Do you have to go in to fix it yourself then to make it right, or what exactly do you have to do with it?
My first step was calling the local municipality with the building permit office saying, this is what I'm faced with. Because you're not going to be the first one asking that question and asking their procedure.
Okay.
Maybe some of them said, listen, let's just come do a cursory inspection, we're seeing red flags, or hey, you need to hire a professional licensed electrical, HVAC, and plumber, let them do an assessment. And if they say it's okay, then they'll be okay with it. Or there's been some houses here in St. Tammany Parish where I've seen some folks remove all the sheetrock so that they can expose all the plumbing and the electrical and the HVAC to get it inspected and have to go back and put it all back together. So don't get real pissy with those folks because they can make your life really hard. And they're the experts anyway, so just follow their lead.
And some things can be grandfathered in as well. Sometimes they'll say, hey, this unpermitted addition is grandfathered in, You just honestly have to ask.
All right, next two big categories, kitchens and baths. I'm always sticking my head in the cabinets, particularly the cabinets underneath the sinks. And the first place I would look is that floor of that cabinet, the bottom of that box, looking for water stains, looking to see if that bottom box if that floor has been changed. Because if it's changed, it's an indication that they've had plumbing leaks there before. Sometimes the bottom of it is not real wood, it's press board. It kind of has a belly to it, because as it gets wet, it kind of has a sag in it, bellies down. Not only that, I'll tell you before, I'm looking for the type of plumbing pipes in there for both the water supply and for the drainage. I'm looking for garbage disposal, I'm looking for rust on the appliances, make sure there's a plug there. I'm looking if there's a dishwasher, where's the dishwasher drain connected to? Also in those kitchen cabinets, looking to see if it's something that, if I want to give it a facelift, can I clean them up and paint them? Is that real wood door, or is that a plastic door? If it's real wood, man, you can clean them up, sand them down, problem with the paint, no problems. If it's a plastic door, depends, because there's some of those polyfoil plastic doors where you can't paint them again. They are where they are. I've even tried to scuff them up, prime them, and paint them, and the paint just doesn't adhere. So kind of look at that cabinet, what's the condition of the cabinet. Maybe you're changing all the faces of the cabinet and you're leaving the boxes. When the boxes are all wood, they're in good shape, fantastic. If you are changing the pulls and the knobs, make sure that you're able to do such an improvement like that and give it that facelift. Also looking at the countertops, particularly if it's an old Formica countertop, I look directly above where the dishwasher's at, because the dishwasher has the most amount of moisture coming out of it. How many times you open the dishwasher door and all the moisture from the dishwasher goes to the other side of that plastic laminate countertop? The bottom of plastic laminate countertops are not plywood, they're press board. So that moisture will deteriorate that really well. You can push down on it, it gets kind of spongy. You'll see that. So that may be a good way for you to remove the tops, replace a good improvement for you to have. Same thing with appliances. Look at the type, the condition, the age. Appliances are actually starting to become something that's very difficult to find. Anybody recently bought new appliances? I mean, the availability and the price is very challenging. So if you have a source of good parts repair person, you may be better repairing and refinishing than buying new at this point. That's going to change. It's just, it'll be hopefully a lot better. Bathrooms. I'm doing the same thing I just did in the kitchen, except I'm inspecting the shower tub. I will also do what I call the flush method. I'll fill up all the bathtubs with water with the drain closed. I'll do the same thing to the kitchen, vanity sinks, fill them up as much as I can with water. And then I'll go around very quickly, pull all the plugs and flush the toilets and watch how fast the water comes out of that toilet. Because that entire drain system being filled with water from the tubs and also from the kitchen sinks. If that toilet flushes really well and very quickly, then I know there's a good chance I don't have any obstructions in the plumbing pipe. I don't have any sags. It's a real quick test. If you are concerned about it, your next step would be hiring a plumber with a camera. Don't put a camera there and inspect that sewer system for you. But the flush test really works fast. It's never failed me. Also, some other stuff for bathrooms, looking for exhaust fans. Bathrooms with wallpaper. You get some of these older homes that have wallpaper. Try and look at that wallpaper more carefully. See if you think it's going to come off easy or not. There's some wallpaper that comes real easy. Comes off with a steamer, no problems. There's other wallpaper, but man, when they installed it, they did a really, really good job. And you're ripping out the facing, the paper facing of the sheetrock when you take it off. So again, that adds more cost. If part of the wallpaper is already falling off, I want to see how easy it is to come off. Bedrooms. You mentioned the doors. I mean, that's the first thing I do. I go to that bedroom door, with the closet and the bedroom door, and I close it, and I compare the reveal or the space between that rectangular door and the frame around it. That's a good telltale sign if there's been some movement. Because if the door has a wide gap at the very bottom, a very narrow gap at the top, it means one of two things. Either the door was installed poorly at the very beginning, or the house moved, or both. So I'll do that for every door, every closet door. I'll look for holes behind the doorknob. That's a good indication for me. I'm looking how well this house was taken care of. There was a hole behind the doorknob, it was repaired or not. Something else too is I'll make a note of a very wild paint color. There was a short sale that Courtney was looking at, and the two chosen bedrooms were painted in normal themed colors. I mean, one of them was the Hulk green. You're not just going to put one coat of paint on top of that green. You are going to sand it down, you're going to prime it, and you can put two top coats to cover that green. The other was Spider-Man blue. It's the same thing. It was intense. So that extra cost, extra time. So make some of those notes as you've been looking at different paint colors.
About 5 minutes, Paul.
5 minutes, all right. I'm rolling quick. All right, let me give you some pricing. Let me qualify. This is an average 3-2 house, 1,600 square foot living, slab on grade, single story home. Let me remind you, always add contingencies to these prices. Always add contingencies to these prices. So, let me give you some categories. This is a hotel update. This is just a facelift. There's no major repairs. You're doing a deep clean and a painting and a facelift. That's what I'm defining as a hotel. Something you can do in 10 to 14 days, right? So real quick turnaround. You're going to budget around $15 to $20 a square foot under beam. Let me define the difference between living and under beam. Living space is where you reside. Living space under beam is the living space plus all the other non-living spaces: the garage, the porches, the patios, carports. So $15 to $20 under beam for a hotel uplift facelift. Something you can do in less than 2 weeks. Add some minor updates to that. Let's say you change the facing on the cabinets. The boxes are good, but you're changing the doors. You're changing the plumbing faucets. The sinks are fine, but and the tub's fine. You're just changing the faucets, updated. You're changing the countertops, and you're also replacing the kitchen appliances. You can add another $6 to $8 square foot on the beam for that. Let me give you a different take on it. A kitchen redo. What I mean by redo is you're replacing the cabinets, the tops, the appliances, the faucets. It's a whole redo of the kitchen. That hangs out somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. To do the same thing for a bathroom, I'm talking about a typical 1,500, 1,600 square foot house bathroom. I'm not talking about a party shower that's got multiple shower heads and massages and all that stuff. I'm talking about a bathroom, right? That's anywhere from 15 to 20 grand.
And is this HGTV level?
This is HGTV level.
Yeah.
Yes, this is full remove and replace. Remove and replace a 3-ton air conditioning system and ductwork. You can count on around $6,000 to $8,000 to do that. Yes, sir.
Is it $15,000 to $20,000 for both bathrooms?
No, per bathroom.
For each, right?
For a
That's
full
each.
bathroom with a full bath, it's a full bath, not like a half bath or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like a master suite, because it's bigger, might be more, right?
And that's the difference between 15 and 20. Because the master you can do a little more. You may have a separate tub shower, a separate tub from the shower.
And Paul, that's a different evaluation for a rental, right?
Yes, sir, very much so. This is an HGTV flip. This is magazine cover ready. All right, 3-ton air conditioning system and ductwork, $6,000 to $8,000 to remove and replace. Remove and replace a roof. Remember, this is a single-story house. This is a 25-year asphalt shingle roof. There's only one roof layer already there. You're removing that one layer and you're replacing it. If you have multiple layers of roofs there, meaning 2 or 3 roofs nailed on top of the original, all that's got to come off. It's going to add some extra cost to this. I'm just talking about remove one layer, put another layer of a 25-year 3-tab shingle. actually an asphalt, it's a architectural cycle. Anywhere from $150 to $180 a square. When you talk about roofing, they don't use square foot, it's a square. A square is 100 square feet, 10 feet by 10 feet is a square. So anywhere from 150 to 180 bucks per square. Remove and replace a tank water heater, whether it's electric or gas, really doesn't matter. Anywhere from 1,200 to 1,600 bucks. Interior painting, where you're painting the walls, the ceilings, and all the millwork. Millwork, I'm talking about baseboard, shoe molding, doors, crown molding. On average, you're about $6 to $7 a square foot of living space, because you're not painting your porches and your patios. And if you're painting your garage, you would include that square footage if you're painting the garage. An entire house. If I took this entire 1,500 square foot home and I want to get every square foot of it HDTV ready, I'm about $45 to $50 per square foot underneath.
And Paul, these are hiring like is these prices for like a general contractor, subcontractors, and then is this for people who are fully licensed, insured?
Yes.
Yeah. So keep in mind that these are the people who are fully insured, professionals, things like that.
If you're doing the work yourself, or you have someone you're doing it with, or you have a crew that you keep busy, your prices will be a lot cheaper than these.
If you choose to risk it with people who are not as experienced and not as insured and not as tenured, I don't know what else to say, those prices go down, but you have to weigh out, one versus the other.
If you are shopping for a crew or a general contractor that you want to do some work on your property, please take the time, do your due diligence. Make sure you're taking the time and you are visiting a job that person has long gone. Go knock on it, whether they're working, hey man, I'm gonna come by and look at the job site. And talk to the owner, talk to some past customers. Get a good feel for the quality of work they do. Not only the quality of work, but did they do it on time? Time is very, very valuable. If they could tell you it could take a month, it actually takes 2 months, that costs a lot of time, effort, and frustration. It may cost you a sale as well. So talk about time frame. Get everything written in detailed scope of work. Don't do anything verbal. When I was building homes, my contract to build a custom-style house was close to 20 pages long. I wrote down to the model number what plumbing fixture I was installing in every single bathroom, the type of cabinets, the handles of one of the cabinets, the model number, the lot number from the flooring. Everything was detailed. You may think that's overkill, but that saves future arguments and disagreements in the future, and that will just frustrate the heck out of you. I think I went rushed towards the last part. You don't have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
With all the increases in pricing right now, is there like a good average price to maybe add if you haven't done like a rehab or a flip or anything like recently? I'm just wondering if there's a good contingency to like add to it.
Depending on my level of work and confidence in my number, my contingency is going to be from 10 to 30%.
And depending on the type of work you're doing too, like if it's
Yes.
very lumber heavy, if it's very like the windows, door, stuff like that, that's very difficult right now. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment, something that caught me the other day. I know it's in Jefferson, I know it's in Orleans, I'm sure it's in St. Tammany. If any utilities are off on a property for more than 6 months, that's what it was in Jefferson, they have to be inspected before they can be turned on. So I don't know if anybody knows that, it doesn't know, but it's a big thing because all of a sudden you have to pay a contractor, and the electrician that came out had a bullshit, make-believe thing that he charged me, for, and I had to pay for it.
We call those fundraisers.
I got him in the end.
Sure.
And you bring a good point. That's actually something I had there that I glanced over. If you're in a rural area and you have a treatment plant, they're not going to give you electricity until you actually get the treatment plant inspected, which most times means you get it pumped out, and it costs you about $350 to get it pumped out and then inspected. So kind of include that in your cost as well.
So my North Covington project that we're about to start, it's been vacant for 11 years. So I have, not only do I have to get the electrical for them to look at the electrical being, good and dandy, but I can't even get a temporary pole. They're making me update the septic in order to get all that, so then the guys can start the renovations on the inside of that. And I'm like, well, dang. And I'll tell you this, those septic, and like inspections, I know St. Tammany, it's like pulling teeth from a baby for them. They don't want me to be there for that inspection, and they fail me for the stupidest things. One time he failed me because it didn't have power. I'm like, I'm trying to get power. It's the whole point, brother. Like, so I'm always like, yeah, there might be dogs in the yard. I have to be there for it. Like, you know, whatever. Like, I have to be there for the inspection, because there's been times where they brought up something, and I'm like, you mean the rock that's on top of this, you know, discharge pipe going to the ditch? I'm like, let me remove the rock, and can you now pass me? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, little things. So I make sure I'm there for that.
Something I did talk about is home inspectors as a professional trade. There are a lot of really good home inspection services out there. If you're new to this, you may choose to utilize their services, but I would suggest you be there so walk them through. Ask questions.
How long does the home inspection take?
A really good one? Good 3 to 4 hours.
About 3 to 4 hours. They range like $300 to $500 for a single family home. I've done that a handful of times.
Guys, I'm just scratching the surface, trying to give you a big overview. I'm hoping you grabbed a couple of nuggets from this. That was really my desire to pick up some decent information conveyed to you. If you have any questions that you want to ask after, I'll be more than willing to stay after the fact and talk. As Courtney mentioned, if you're running this during the week and you want to call the radio show on Saturday, by all means, please call the show, text, whatever.
Yeah.
We're here to help. We really want to see everyone get better at this.
I've seen way too many investors get bit because they didn't understand this part, and it bit them at the end. You're new. If you don't have construction background, if you're new at buying, please buy that home inspection. You know, please do. Honestly, don't trip over. You know, don't try to save money on that. I know you're going to give out those books. I'm going to keep delegating that to you. Let me give you guys a few quick tips as someone who is not a construction professional that I've had to learn over the years so that I can do this. First of all, one of my friends introduced me to this. If you have a marble and you're in a house and you put it on the floor, if it moves, and if it moves significantly, if you have to go chase the marble, there might be an issue, right?
It could be haunted. Like it's
It
haunted.
could be haunted. You know, open the
So
doors.
what's an exorcism called?
This is sage. No, I was kidding. So, okay, a few things that I look for. I'm looking at, when I walk a property, I know, Cole, you've walked, some of you guys have walked properties with me. I go take a look at the electrical, I look at the plumbing. Like, when I look at electrical, I go look at either in the garage or in one of the closets, or the utility room, I'm looking for that electrical panel. Does it have fuses? Does it have breakers? Does it look like someone hired a third grader to put together? You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at that, I'm taking notes. Plumbing, same thing, I'm looking at the kitchen, the bathroom sinks. I'm looking at what's going on. Another thing I'm looking at is the roof. So plumbing, electrical, roof. I'm looking at the HVAC. Exactly what he brought up as far as, I call them I know a guys. When people are like, oh, I know a guy, he can help me with that. That is up there with me for fire damage. I'm looking for any type of signs of fire damage or water damage or termite damage. Those three things. I knew a guy at work is right up there as a major red flag for me. And you often see it in additions. Very rarely have I seen additions done well. Would you agree? I literally, a lot of you, there's this woman who's been shopping around her house. She's calling it a We Buy Houses sign for years now. It's literally a U-shaped house that is, the original house is here, and there's like 10 additions to where it's now a U-shaped house. It is a crazy situation. Additions, especially if they're not done well, that's just, it's a bad situation. Also, porches, patios are often not done. Like if it's done after the fact, if they've added on like an enclosed porch or something like that, if they don't do it well, there's going to be situations. So I look for, those are some of the things I look for. I look and see if they've been changing their filter, because if they don't change that air filter, that actually bogs down the actual AC and causes it to have damage. So that's something I look for. I look and see, is the water heater original? Like, are the appliances original to the house? Is the HVAC original to the house? And if the house isn't like 15 years old, that's a problem for me. So when I'm walking a house from the 80s and those things are original, I'm concerned. So termite damage. Things I look for, termite damage. Internally, you can often see trails in sheetrock. I look around windows, and if the house is on like a slab grade, I would go and walk around the exterior, and I'm looking for little brown trails on that slab. If the slab has so much growth of like grass and stuff over it, or like too many shrubs and stuff, those aren't usually good signs. But if I see those things, a lot of times I'll go and like kick it with my shoe or move it with my hand, and you can actually see live termites sometimes come out of it. We went door knocking the other day, and I pointed it out. I said, look at those termite trails in this woman's house. So those are things I look for. There have been times, I've been with Paul, I noticed around a door trim that there was termite damage, and I started doing this, looking like listening for the stud. If you've ever done this looking for a stud, and I did this, and what happened? Literally, my fist went through the sheetrock, and it was like this huge indentation. I was like, we might have a soft spot right here. I'm looking for water stains. So not only am I looking for water stains on the ceiling, things like that, I'm looking for water stain like on the actual house. Because you guys ever seen post-flood those stains? So I'm looking for things like that. The crawdads in the yard, those things shows me it's holding water. If it's a raised house, I'm going to start closing up here. If it's a raised house, if they have tile, I'm concerned. Because a house that's on piers, that's raised, I just think it's not a good idea to put tile in those because they're often cracked. Just because there's going to be common movement in that. And so I will get underneath houses. I swear I'm going to find a dead body with how much I go looking for stuff in houses. But I'll get underneath raised houses. I'll look at stuff. I'll get into attics. I'll find things. So in attics, often the water heater pan or the AC pan, if they don't, properly do things like that, that can drip and cause leaks. I asked the owner straight up about flood damage. Hey, what did it do for Katrina? What did it do in 16, 17? What did it do, recently? Things like that. If there was a recent storm with Zeta, how did things go? Termite damage, I'll ask them if they've had any termite history. Hey, is it currently under a termite contract? Right? Things like that. So when I'm looking for fire damage, a fire damage property is way different. I can tell you, some fire damage properties, the parish or the city won't actually let you rebuild. They'll force you at a certain percentage of damage to scrape it and have to go back. So there is a lot of variables going on with things, and so ultimately, the older the house is, the more work we have to put in. Generally speaking, ask them, when's the last time you renovated have you done any work to the electrical? Have you done any work to the plumbing? Have you done any work to the AC? Have you done any work to, have you replaced the water heater? Anything like that. Those things are important. I promise that this is something that grows with experience. I've never been a contractor, right? Like, this is not something that is my trade, but I've walked hundreds, if not thousands of houses at this point. And so I promise it gets better with time. I will say this, if you want to learn more, get around people who it's their actual trade and learn from them. Pay for home inspections, and I've sat through the 4-hour home inspections being like, I promise I'm not going to be annoying, but like, I literally watch what they're looking for, right? Because I'm trying to learn so that I can better manage future projects, so that I can be better on my next walkthrough, whatever it looks like. Then obviously I ask him questions and things like that. So those are some general thoughts that I have. If you don't have utilities, if you do not have utilities on, factor in, AC may not work, you may have some electrical issues. If you don't have water on, factor in there may be issues. Those things can all come into play here. All right, figure out those books?
Yep.
Last little bit here. It's the hardest part of my job, which is why I like to give the job away.
So there are 3 books. David and Goliath, on the dogs. They had it. And Joanna, the story. Who is from Mississippi? You know the story?
I'm not originally from
You will know.
Mississippi.
All right. Go on. All right. All right. So the eighth habit, from effective to greatness. Who wants to be better? Better. Come on.
Better, just better. I just want to be better. Look, I'm like one of those things. I'm like, who can raise their hand tonight?
Somebody's got to raise their hand, right? All right, David, go on. I actually haven't read this book.
Malcolm Gladwell is a really, he's one of my top authors.
Underdogs, misfits, the odds of battling giants. Who's got a challenge in your life right now that you need to take out your sword about? There you go.
Okay, you see, it's not as easy.
It's not.
All right, you guys, that is one of the things I like. I literally, I love giving out the books, but it's always so hard. Paul, thank you so much. Guys, honestly, when I say that you a resource from the weekend, some of the most common questions we get, hey, I hired this contractor. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. What are my, then they'll call him. Or, hey, I hired this contractor. They did such bad work. I now have to hire a new person. Or, hey, I did this shortcut and now I have these problems. Look, sometimes if you just listen on Saturdays from 11 to 1, I feel like my knowledge has like tenfold increased just by listening to people ask questions. Like his list of yearly maintenance projects, I was like, I didn't even know you were supposed to do that. You know what I mean? Like how the things that you're supposed to maintain within your home. Tons that I've learned, so that's a huge resource to you guys. Hey, August 10th, next month, be back here. We're going to do a class that's going to be great for that. What's up, man?
What was the channel again? You said
8:70 a.m. If you follow me on Instagram, I share a lot about different projects working on, different things like that. Every Saturday in my stories, I share, the stuff about the show.
105.3 FM.
105.
Don't want to listen to AM anymore.
Well, you can say that. Okay, thank you. I hope you guys got some value out tonight. What's up?
What was the topic for the next show?
For the next class, it is going to be, we're going to be talking about just like the Adam's book is called REI Playbook or Real Estate Playbook, something like that. I don't even freaking know. Something like that. But we're going to be talking along the lines of getting your first deal, getting your next deal, overcoming some of those hurdles, some great next steps. There's going to be some marketing coming out for that, so however you hear about us, keep tuned in there because I'm going to refine those parts. I have some great people lined up for the rest of the year. I've got Civic Source coming and teaching, talking about things like that. We're going to be playing, I haven't told anyone this that I know of, but we're going to be playing Cash Flow. Yes. The game Cash Flow. I've been perfecting my craft of doing it with the whole room. That is not easy. In August, I'm traveling to Atlanta to speak at an event, and we're going to be doing there again. I'm like, good, I get more practice before December. So thank you guys so much for coming. See you back again August 10th. Grab some things out there, but thank you guys so much. Thank you, Paul. Excellent job. Thank you, guys.